Tuesday, August 12th, 1947. 9:34 a.m. Small's Paradise, a legendary nightclub and restaurant on 135th Street and 7th Avenue in Harlem that operated as neutral ground where different factions of New York's criminal underworld could conduct business without the territorial tensions that made most interactions potentially fatal. The breakfast service at Small's was particularly valued by men whose work happened primarily at night. Criminals, entertainers, corrupt politicians, and the various intermediaries who facilitated business between these overlapping worlds. Bumpy Johnson sat at his regular corner booth, the same table he'd occupied every Tuesday and Friday morning for the past 6 years when he was in Harlem and not traveling for business that required his personal attention. At 51 years old, Bumpy had refined his daily routines to maximize efficiency and minimize unnecessary risk. Breakfast at Small's allowed him to be visible to his community, to demonstrate that he remained accessible despite controlling an organization that generated hundreds of thousands of dollars annually, and to conduct the kind of casual conversations that yielded more useful intelligence than formal meetings ever could. The coffee at Small's was excellent, imported from Cuba through connections that Bumpy had maintained since the 1930s, when he'd helped facilitate certain transactions between Harlem numbers runners and Havana casino operators. Bumpy took his coffee black, no sugar, served in the heavy ceramic mugs that Small's had been using since the club opened in 1925. He was reading the morning newspaper, specifically an article about the newly created President's Committee on Civil Rights that Truman had established to investigate racial violence in the South, when the incident happened that would transform an ordinary Tuesday morning into something that required immediate and emphatic response. Anthony Genovese Jr. was 19 years old, the eldest son of Anthony Little Augie Genovese, a capo regime in the Genovese crime family, who controlled gambling operations in parts of the Bronx and Upper Manhattan. Young Anthony had grown up surrounded by wealth that came from his father's criminal enterprises, had attended private schools where his last name carried weight, and had developed the particular kind of arrogance that comes from never experiencing consequences for bad behavior, because powerful relatives ensured that consequences were always redirected toward other people. Little Augie Genovese had brought his son to Small's that morning as part of what he considered educational introduction to the various power brokers who operated in New York's criminal economy. Little Augie understood that his son would eventually inherit responsibilities within the family business, and needed to learn how to navigate relationships with black criminal operators like Bumpy Johnson, who controlled territories that the Italian families couldn't simply absorb through force. This breakfast was meant to be a lesson in respect, in recognizing power regardless of race, in understanding that survival in organized crime required strategic thinking